American sleeping sickness. Chagas disease, also known as American sleeping sickness, is a tropical parasitic disease caused by Trypanosoma cruzi. It was first discovered in the vector by Carl Chagas in 1907, and that's why this is called Chagas disease, and then shown to cause human disease. Chagas disease is mainly restricted to South and Central American countries like Brazil and Argentina. It is spread mostly by insects in the subfamily Tritonomiae, known as kissing bugs. Trypanosoma cruzi is commonly spread to humans and other mammals by the kissing bug's bite, wound, and infected feces. The disease may also be spread throughout blood transfusion, organ transplantation, consuming food or drink contaminated with the parasites, and vertical transfusion from a mother to her child. It is a zoonotic disease having many animal reservoirs like dogs, cats, opossums, and rodents. The diseases may be acute or chronic. Life cycle host Trypanosoma cruzi, passing its life cycle in two hosts: humans, vector redovid bugs or kissing bugs, or triatomine bugs. Infective form: metacyclic trypomastigote form is the infective form found in feces of kissing bugs. Infective form: metacyclic trypomastigote. Mode of transmission: kissing bugs are blood feeders and nocturnal in habitat, and humans get infection when mucous skin membranes become contaminated with kissing bugs feces containing infective form of the parasite. Development in human. Chagas disease is caused by infection with the protozoan parasite Trypanosoma cruzi, which is typically introduced into humans through the bites of kissing bugs. When the insect defecates at the bite site, motile Trypanosoma cruzi forms called trypomastigote enter the bloodstream and invade various host cells. Inside a host cell, the parasite transforms into a replicate form called a mastigote. In these tissues, the amastigotes multiply by binary fission, forming a cyst-like mass of growth known as pseudocyst. Many amastigote within the pseudocyst are transformed into motile C-shaped non-multiplying trypanomastigote forms. Wait a minute, I'm going to read this once again. When the insect defecates at the bite site, motile Trypanosoma cruzi forms called trypomastigotes enter the bloodstream and invade various host cells. Inside the host cell, the parasite transforms into a replicator form called a mastigote. So this trypomastigote turns into a mastigote. In these tissues, the amastigotes multiply by binary fission, forming a cyst-like mass of growth known as pseudocyst. Many amastigotes within the pseudocyst are transformed into motile C-shaped non-multiplying trypomastigote forms. Trypomastigotes rupture from the pseudocyst and invade the bloodstream. Development in redwood bugs. A triatomine bug can become infected with Trypanosoma cruzi when it feeds on the infected host. Trypanomastigote forms are transmitted to redwood bugs during blood meal. They transform to amastigote forms in the foregut. Amastigotes migrate to midgut, multiply by binary fission, and transform into epimastigotes. These epimastigote, what happens with epimastigotes? No information about that. So the insect life cycle takes about 10 to 15 days. Detection and enzyme linked immunosorbent assay is now used to detect Trypanosoma cruzi antibodies in donated blood, followed by radioimmunoprecipitation assay as a confirmatory test. Pathophysiology. Chagas disease occurs in acute and chronic forms. The former is most common in children and the later among adolescents and young adults. The disease inflicts severe damage to heart, nervous system, and skeletal muscle in the heart, colon, and esophagus. Chronic disease leads to massive loss of nerve endings, A persistent high fever is a common feature. Edema of the one side of the face and inflammation of the corresponding eye is a characteristic symptom. Then swelling of local lymph nodes, inflammation of the liver and spleen, enlargement and irregular beating of heart, nerve and mental disturbances are additional symptoms. There is no cure for the disease and the victim succumbs to slow death. Next, Kala Azar. Kala Azar, also known as visceral leishmaniasis or black fever, is a disease occurring in tropical and subtropical Asia and Africa, tropical South America. In India, it is known common in Assam, Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, and Tamil Nadu. It is caused by the parasitic hemoflagellate Leishmania donovani, a intracellular endoparasite living in macrophages of spleen, liver, intestinal mucosa, lymph glands, bone marrow of man. So it is caused by the parasitic hemoflagellate Leishmania donovani, and this one is a parasite. Endoparasite living in macrophages of spleen, liver, intestinal mucosa, lymph glands, and bone marrow of man. So it is caused by this Leishmania donovani. The disease spread through the bite of sandfly. Leishmania donovani exists in two morphologically different stages, namely amastigote stage and promastigote stage. Amastigote lives in the reticuloendothelial cells of man and mammalian reserve hosts, and promastigote in the gut of sandfly. Amastigote stage occurs in man and the promastigote stage in sandfly. Leishmaniasis. First, sandfly takes a blood meal, injects promastigote stage into the skin. Sandfly injects promastigote stage into the skin. Promastigotes are phagocytes by macrophages. Then promastigote transform into amastigotes inside macrophage. Then amastigote multiply in cells including macrophages or various diseases. Then sandfly takes a blood meal. The ingestion of internalized cell, and amastigotes transform into promastigote stage in midgut, divide in midgut and migrate to proboscis. By the bite of infected female sandfly, injection of infected stage promastigotes proboscis during blood meal. Promastigotes are phagocytized by macrophages and other types of mononuclear phagocytic cells. Promastigote transform into amastigotes inside the macrophage. Amastigote multiply in infected cells and affect different tissues. Sandfly become infected during blood meal on an infected host, and they ingest macrophages injected with amastigotes. In sandfly, midgut mastigote convert into promastigotes, which multiply and migrate to the proboscis. Mode of transmission. Humans occur by bite by an infected female sandfly. It can also be transmitted vertically from mother to fetus by blood transfusion. Prophylaxis. Destruction of immediate hosts by mechanical chemical methods. Killing of infected reserve hosts such as dogs and cats. Isolation of patients to prevent the spreading of the disease. Then treatment. Antimony compounds such as urea, stibamine, neostibosan, and sodium antimony, and non-metallic drugs such as pentadiimidine, stilbamidine. The treatment of Kala Azar usually takes 4 weeks or more to complete. Amphotericin B, sodium stibogluconate. Symptoms. The major clinical features include fever or eruptive pyrexia. Generalized glandular enlargement of spleen and liver, dry cough, dark skin, anemia. Changes in bone marrow include hyperplasia, overgrowth of tissue due to excessive cell multiplication. This causes disturbances in hematopoietic blood cell forming activities of the bone marrow, resulting in leukopenia, abnormally low count of lymphocytes. Then it has a profound immunosuppressive effect. It may disrupt immune mechanisms, night sweats, weight loss. Death is always due to secondary complications such as pneumonia, pulmonary tuberculosis, measles. Hair become thin and brittle. Plague. Plague is a zoonotic disease caused by highly virulent bacteria, Yersinia pestis. It is transmitted from the rodents to humans by the bite of infected fleas and direct contact with infected fluids or tissue. Yersinia pestis is a gram-negative Coccobacillus bacteria. So far we learned about parasitic diseases. This one is about bacterial disease. Okay. Yersinia pestis is a gram-negative Coccobacillus bacterium, which is an endoparasite in blood-feeding rat fleas. The bacteria, animal reservoir, and the vectors in a given area are collectively called a plague natural focus. Plague is a fatal disease with approximately more than 200 million people have been dead by this disease. It is common to man and many lower animals also. It is a typical disease of some rodents, which is primary source of disease among human beings. Then the plague appears first as an epizootic disease among rats, especially in house rats, Rattus rattus, and then it becomes an epidemic disease among human beings. The infection is transmitted from rat to man by rat fleas. The plague bacilli multiply in the gastrointestinal tract of flea. The flea then, in turn, may remain infectious for as long as 6 weeks. Rat is not only the only destroyer host of the plague bacillus. In Siberia and Manchuria, marmots are the important reservoir. In Argentina, wild guinea pigs serve as reservoir hosts. Positive organism. The disease is caused by the plague bacillus rod-shaped bacteria referred to as Yersinia pestis. Yersinia pestis was discovered in 1894. By Alexander Yersin. That means it's called Yersinia. That's why it's called Yersinia pestis. It is a non-motile gram-negative Coccobacillus that is non-sporulating. Then it can infect humans and animals. We have the oriental rat flea. It can reproduce inside cells, so even if phagocytized, they can still survive because it produces an antiphagocytic slime layer. Types. There are three types of plague: bubonic plague, pneumonic, and septicemic. Bubonic plague. It is the commonest form. It is usually results from the bite of an infected flea or by introduction of contaminated fluid or tissue into an open wound. After an incubation period of 2 to 6 days, there is an acute onset of symptoms such as fever, headache, chills, and weakness. About 24 hours after starting of these symptoms, swollen extremely tender lymph nodes known as buboes filled with multiply filled with Y pepsis appear. These buboes typically form from lymph nodes that were closest to the site of infection. The pneumonic plague, it is the most infectious and the most fatal type of plague. Primarily, pneumonic plague develops when a person inhales infectious droplets emitted by a pneumonic plague sufferer. Secondary pneumonic plague can develop when the untreated bubonic or septicemic plague spreads into the lungs. Symptoms include fever, chills, headache, weakness, and developing pneumonia, which includes symptoms of cough, chest pain, and shortness of breath. And end stages of untreated pneumonic plague, adult respiratory distress syndrome, and shock can sometimes be seen. Death may occur within Death may occur within 4 to 5 days. Septicemic plague, when the bacteria enter the bloodstream directly and multiply there, it is known as septicemic plague. It can either develop primarily through the introduction of contaminated fluid or tissue into an open wound, or secondarily as a result of untreated bubonic plague. There is a sudden onset of symptoms including fever, chills, nausea, and vomiting, tissue blackening, and death. Specifically in the fingers, toes, and nose is also seen. Tissue blackening and death, specifically in the fingers, toes, and nose is also seen. And transmission. Transmission: air droplets, coughing or sneezing on another person, direct physical contact, touching an infected person, including sexual contact, indirect contact, usually by touching contaminated soil or contaminated surface. Vector-borne transmission carried by insects of other animals. Plague transmission. First, flea life cycle. Flea, egg, larvae, pupa, flea. Infected flea. Infected rodent. No, 2. Enzootic cycle. In infected rodent, infected flea, infected rodent, like that. Then third, epizootic cycle. This flea infects other animal. Cat, for example. Flea, cat, flea. Infected animal, mammal. Okay. Then next, flea to human transmission, bubonic plague, pneumonic plague, human to human transmission can also happen. Flea life cycle. Fleas lay their eggs in the moist soil of rodent burrows. Larvae feed on rodent feces and develop to form pupae and later fleas. Adult fleas parasitize rodents and can become infected with Y. pestis. So, fleas lay their eggs in the moist soil of rodent burrows. Larvae feed on rodent feces and develop to form pupae and later fleas. Adult fleas parasitize rodents and can become infected with this Y. pestis. Enzootic cycle. Rodents act as hosts and reservoirs of Y. pestis, recognized vectored by fleas. Then epizootic cycle. It occurs when the fleas infect mammals which are not the natural hosts of Y. pestis. These newly infected mammals spread plague to new areas and lacking resistance die quickly from Y. pestis. Humans may become infected via the bite of flea originating from an infected rodent or other mammal. Bubonic plague may develop into pneumonic plague by affecting the lungs to induce a cough that generates respiratory droplets containing Y. pestis which are inhaled by other individuals. Pathogenicity: the incubation period of pneumonic plague is 3 to 4 days and That of others is 2 to 6 days. The disease sets is severely with severe chill and high fever. Rapid rise of body temperature, headache, nausea, vomiting. Circulatory disorders become marked with tachycardia, fall in atrial pressure. The death rate in untreated cases range from 25 to 50. Treatment administration of sulfolamines, sulfadiene, sulfadiamine, or the protection of those who have been exposed to plague. An administration of tetracyclines, streptomycin, antibiotic to get the best result. And typhus fever. Typhus fever is an infective disease of worldwide distribution. The causative organism of the different type of typhus are the different species of rickettsia. Common symptoms include fever, headache, and rash. Based on vectors, three kinds of typhus fever can be recognized follows. Lowe's typhus vector is a Lowe's, epidemic typhus, French fever. Then flea typhus vector is a flea, murine typhus. Then tick typhus vector is a tick, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, African tick typhus. Then louse typhus. This is the typhus in which infecting rickettsia is transmitted by a louse. There are two types of it, namely epidemic typhus and French fever. Epidemic typhus, it is also known as European typhus, classical typhus. The causative organism of epidemic typhus is Rickettsia prowazekii. The vector which transmitted, it is the human head louse and body louse. Infection never take place by the bite of body louse. Instead, the Rickettsia contained in feces and crushed bodies of lice enter through the scratches of the skin. The pathogen can survive in the dried feces of the lice for nearly 60 days, and these are probably the main source of infection. When a louse sucks the blood of a typhus patient, it becomes contagious in 4 to 5 days, during which rickettsia multiply in a louse intestinal epithelium. And after destruction of the epithelial cells, the rickettsia gain entrance to the intestinal lumen and excreted in great amount with feces. Pathogenicity, the incubation period of epidemic typhus is 10 to 15 days. The onset of disease is preceded by headache and pain in the back and limbs. On the third day after the onset, there will be sudden rise of temperature. In about the fifth or sixth day, the characteristic rash called mulberry rash may appear in the abdomen, chest, inner side of arms and back. Mortality rate ranges from 10% to 100%. Clinical picture, specific rash appears on the 4th to 5th day of disease, by which the initial period of the disease. And French fever, it is an infectious human disease. Its causative pathogen is Rickettsia quintana, which is transmitted from person to person by human head louse, Pediculus humanus, and body louse, Pediculus humanus corporis. The major symptoms of the disease are skin rash, fever, and spleen enlargement. The pathogenesis, French fever is an exclusively human disease and no animal reservoir is known. It is transmitted by the body louse, Pediculus humanus. The lice becomes infectious 5 to 9 days after feeding in a French fever patient, after which the lice remains infectious throughout their life and excretes organisms in their feces. The infected lice, when bite a non-host, they defecate on the surface of the skin, and the feces then comes in contact with the minor scratches or abrasions on the surface of the skin. The bacteria present in the feces enter the skin and initiate infection. This is a bacterial disease, don't forget that. Then flea typhus, murine typhus, are also known as endemic typhus. This is typhus in which the infecting rickettsia is transmitted by flea. The causative organism is Rickettsia typhi and the vector is a rat flea. Rat results are the main reservoir of infection. Symptoms of endemic typhus include headache, fever, muscle pain, joint pain, nausea, and vomiting. Transmission, the pathogen is transmitted from rat to man to rat flea and from one rat to another rat by a rat louse and rat mite. Once man is infected, human louse may act as a transmitter of the rickettsia from man to man. Then tick typhus, also called tick fever, blue fever, or black measles. That is the typhus in which the infected rickettsia is transmitted by ticks. This is found in different parts of the world. Tick typhus include Rocky Mountain spotted fever, tick bite fever. Rocky Mountain fever. This typhus fever is found in many of the western and eastern states of USA and in some part of Canada and South America. The causative agent is Rickettsia rickettsii and the commonest vectors are wood tick and dog tick. But other ticks may also occasionally transmit the disease. The highest incidence of the disease is in spring and early summer when the ticks are most active. The disease is characterized by rashes, apparently first on wrist and ankle and then spreading to all parts of the body. Then causes ticks are the natural hosts of the disease, serving as both reservoirs and vectors of rickettsia. Ticks transmit the bacteria primarily by their bites. Less commonly, infections may occur following exposure to crushed tick tissues, fluids, or tick feces. A female tick can transmit rickettsia to her eggs in a process called transovarial transmission. Ovarial transmission. Ticks can also become infected with rickettsia while feeding on blood from the host on either the larval or nymphal stage. After the tick develops into the next stage, our rickettsia may be transmitted to the second host during the feeding process. Furthermore, male ticks may transfer our rickettsia to female ticks through body fluids of spermatozoa during the mating process. This type of transmission represents how generations or life stages of infected ticks are maintained. Once infected, the tick can carry the pathogen for life. Pathogenicity, the incubation period ranges from 3 to 12 days. The onset of the disease is very rapid and it is marked by 1 or 2 days of intense headache, severe backache in the lumbar region, and loss of appetite. This is accompanied by rigor, congestion of eyes, and rise in temperature up to 41.4 degrees Celsius. Rashes mainly appear during the second to fourth day after the onset. They are more florid than those of the louse typhus, and the temperature settles slowly after 2 to 3 weeks. Then prevalence is very low. In fatal infection, death may occur between 9 to 15 days after infection. The average mortality rate is 20%. Eggs, larvae, nymph, male and female. African tick typhus. African tick bite fever. ATBF is a bacterial infection spread by the bite of a tick, common in South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Tick bite fever is caused by the bacterium rickettsia. The causative rickettsia is transmitted to man by a number of ticks, which in turn are transmitted to man by dogs and cattle. Symptoms may include fever, headache, muscle pain, and a rash. At the site of bite, there is typically a red skin sore with a dark scent. The onset of symptoms usually occurs 4 to 10 days after the bite. Complications are rare, but many may include joint inflammation. The main manifestations of the diseases are similar to those of Rocky Mountain spotted fever, but the disease usually runs a much milder course with a mortality rate of less than 1%. The fever may persist for nearly 2 weeks. Vectors, 2 species of hard ticks are the most common vectors of R. africae. Typically, Amblyomma hebeum transmit the bacteria in South Africa, while Amblyomma variegatum varies R. africae throughout West, Central, and East Africa throughout the French West Indies. After the rickettsia bacteria infects humans through the tick bite, it invades endothelial cells in the circulatory system, veins, arteries, capillaries, and the body then releases chemicals that cause inflammation, resulting in the characteristic symptoms like headache and fever. So this tick bite fever is very severe, but mortality rate is less than 1%. 2 weeks വരെ നീണ്ടു നിൽക്കും. Vectors, Amblyomma variegatum, and Amblyomma hebat. So typhus is of different types. Different types in the sense typhus fever. First we discussed louse typhus, epidemic typhus, then French fever, flea typhus, tick typhus, Rocky Mountain fever, and this African tick typhus. Thank you.